Okay guys, so it is finally here, and that of course is the 2020 all-new Shimano Metanium. Now I will say this, I was offered one a couple of weeks ago, right after the Japanese fishing shows. I guess there was some shop that got their batch like really early, and they had sent me an email about it. But I had already made my commitment to Japan Lure Shop for a pre-order. Plus I have been buying a ton of reels and other stuff for the channel lately, so I figured the money that I saved, which is probably roughly $100 by waiting, was well worth it. Now initially I wanted to get the XG extra high gear model, but apparently those sold out real quick, and I guess I wasn't fast enough on the pre-order email, so I opted to get the regular 6.2 ratio instead of waiting. Alright, well that was pretty easy. Alright, let's see what gift I got. Alright, I got another Vision 110 in a crazy color. It's like silver with like these yellow dots and stripes on it. What kind of fish would this imitate? But let me put that off to the side. Alright, here it is. Now where are my scissors? Okay, here they are. So a few of the Japanese YouTubers have gotten this reel already and have been making videos, and I think there's been a couple of American YouTubers as well, but for the most part it's not been a lot of buzz around this reel, so hopefully we can change that. Alright, so the box, immediately I can tell it's different. It's not black, it's kind of like a dark slate gray color. Alright, so let's not wait any longer. Let's open this thing up. Got your instructions, schematics, oil of course. Gonna put the box off to the side. Okay, I can already tell this thing is extremely small. Why won't it come out of the bag? There we go. Okay guys, take a look at this thing. This thing is little. Look at that. Gonna let you guys take a good look at this thing. Gonna rotate it all around. Of course, made in Japan. Ooh, super smooth. I don't know about that thumb bar. Okay, I'm gonna give it the good once or twice over, take down some notes, and get back. Okay, so the first order of business we're gonna do is we're going to compare the new Metanium size-wise against a bunch of other different reels. Now the first reel we're going to compare it to is going to be the CURADO K. Hopefully you guys can see that. But the CURADO K looks just a little bit wider, but the top part of the Metanium looks to be narrower, kind of giving you the impression that it is smaller. But ultimately the Metanium, the body at least, is a tiny bit smaller than the CURADO K. Now of course the CURADO K's got this monster gearbox, and here's a funny comparison. The new Metanium against the ANTARES DC, and hopefully it'll come through in the camera, but the ANTARES DC is just massive compared to this new Metanium. much taller on the reel seat as well. Okay, so let's compare it to the next reel. That's going to be the Shimano ALDEBARAN 30. And holding them in hand, in my opinion, they're very close, but the Metanium actually is a little bit smaller. Not sure if that's coming through on the camera or not. But the Antares, the ALDEBARAN is still a little bit lower on the reel seat. Okay, so in my opinion, the smallest reel in Shimano's lineup is going to be the SLX. Now, I can't seem to find mine, but I do have my SLX MGL, and very, very similar. The Metanium, however, does look like it is noticeably longer, but width-wise, they are very similar, but the SLX sits a little bit lower, it looks like. Okay, so the second smallest reel in Shimano's lineup, in my opinion, is going to be the CURADO 70, and they look pretty even. Now, this massive top frame of the Metanium is kind of deceiving versus a smaller one of the CURADO 70, but yeah, the CURADO 70 definitely sits lower. Okay, so how about a non-Shimano? And this is the new DAIWA TATULA SV 103. And it is noticeably bigger, especially in the width department. For all you DAIWA guys, not sure that someone who is shopping for a TATULA is going to be shopping for a Metanium, but there you go. So let's take a look at the new Metanium against the other reel that has the core solid body, and that's the BANTAM. Now, when I first compared these two, it looked like the Metanium was smaller to me, but then again, that's also the trick of the narrower top plate. But they are very similar in size. I'd say about the same, but the Metanium is definitely longer. You can see the differences in the side plates there. But yeah, the BANTAM is still a very tiny reel. And then the last reel is going to be the new ANTARES. And honestly, they look about the same. Of course, the ANTARES has got an asymmetrical shape, but they look about the same to me, which is good news because this thing is tiny. But yeah, the ANTARES, if it had relations with the BANTAM, then the offspring would be this Metanium. But just to let you guys know, the BANTAM feels definitely much heavier than the Metanium in hand. Yeah, that is a massive difference in weight. But yeah, there we go guys, the size comparison of the new Metanium versus several other reels, mostly Shimano. But now it's time to compare it to the most important reel, and that is the old Metanium that this is replacing. Okay, so before we start comparing Metaniums, I just want to show you guys something real quick, and that's comparing the color of the new Metanium against the current CHRONARCH MGL. Now, I thought they were the same color, but hopefully it'll come through on the camera. In hand, the new Metanium is definitely darker than the CHRONARCH MGL. And I'm pretty sure it comes through on the camera. So I'm not sure I really like this color, but we'll go into more of that later. Now, this is the first all-new Metanium since the 2013 model, which I have here. And in 2016, they did an update to this model and came out with the MGL, which is this model here. They changed the color, they gave it a new spool, new brake system, one extra bearing, a couple of minor changes, but basically they were the same reel. But now we have this new 2020 model, and now it's time to compare the size between the two. Hopefully it'll come through on the camera, but the new model is definitely way smaller, at least from the top. And then on the side, it is as well. But the thing is, I think the old model may actually still be lower on the reel seat. I have mounted this on a rod and palmed it. It is super comfortable, and there is a noticeable difference in palming between the two. The side plate of the old model definitely takes up a whole lot of hand real estate, while the new one, the footprint is just so much smaller. And as usual, Shimano has kept the side plates free of any kind of protrusions or sharp angles that could make palming uncomfortable. So now that we got the size comparisons out of the way, let's talk about something even more important, and of course that's going to be the looks. Now, which reel do you guys think looks better? Here's the old one. That's kind of funny. The old Metanium was one of the reels that I saw initially only on the internet, and I thought it was pretty ugly. But then once I got it and handled it in person, it looked a lot better. And then of course when I started fishing it and casting it, it looked great. It's one of those reels that kind of pulls that trick on you because it performs so good. It looks better and better each time. And now I've personally grown to love the shape and look of the old Metanium. As you can see, it's got a very, very detailed handle side plate. And I heard that, you know, machining and milling magnesium is very labor intensive and hard to do. So just look at all the detail in this old side plate. Very, very elegant, very, very low slung, racy looking reel. Now let's take a look at the new one. Now it's definitely lost a lot of that elegance, but it's definitely gained a more rugged, more industrial look. Now the side plate is not as good looking in my opinion, but there is a lot going on. But the major improvement of the new one over the old one is going to be the palm side plate, where you have this elegant looking or nice looking brake dial. Now of course the old one, it was just a, you know, pretty plain looking side plate. So that's where the new one definitely is an improvement in my opinion. So let me know what you think, the old one or the new one. Okay, so now that we got the looks comparison out of the way, let's talk about all the changes, and there's actually quite a lot. Now, in fact, the only thing that hasn't changed is the bearing count, and it stayed the same at 10+1 bearings. So the obvious major change is the new, more compact, much smaller core solid frame and body. So that means this new Metanium has only 3 pieces that make up its frame and body, while the old one had 5. So you got your main frame, it's 1 piece. You got your handle side plate, that's piece number 2. And then you got your brake dial integrated into the main frame, and that's piece number 3. And what's changed here also is that it's all magnesium now, even this brake dial cover. While with the old model, only the frame and handle side plate were magnesium, while the palm side plate was CI4+. And because the new frame and body is so compact and narrow now, of course they went with the new, smaller and narrower MGL3 spool, just like on the Antares A. So the spool width went from 22 millimeters down to 19. But just like the Antares A, they say it's an MGL spool, but they didn't give it any kind of sidewall porting. So I'm wondering if that porting made any kind of difference at all. Okay, so one of the huge changes that you can't see here is that they went with the brass micromodule gears. Now they're still the second level micromodule gears, so you're not going to get the, you know, super fine teeth of the Antares and Conquest gears. But they say changing over to brass will make the gears more durable. Now I've been fishing these two reels for years, and I fished them really hard before I started my YouTube channel. and they are just as smooth as day one, so I personally had no problems with the aluminum gears on the old models. Now let's talk about the components. Now the drag star is not metal anymore, it's CI4+, and they did that to save weight. But you really couldn't tell by this metallic paint job that it was CI4+. As you can see, they have ported the arms to reduce weight. And let's talk about the handle. This is a very, very welcome change. This is probably the best looking stock Shimano handle I've ever seen. It's very similar to the one on the CURADO, but they've definitely slimmed it down and skeletonized it more. And it is definitely a welcome change from the very ugly handle of the old models. That is not a handle that you expect to see on a $420 reel. The new model looks much better. Now let's talk about the spool tension. It's kind of a downgrade in my opinion. No big surprise, doesn't click, but it looks like it's gotten smaller in size, and they kind of ditched the MGL logo. So here's the new one, and here's the old one. It's definitely bigger, and you got that MGL logo etched into it, but it is still very smooth to turn. And let's talk about another major change, and that's going to be these knobs. As you can see, the knob end caps have changed, and I think they are definitely better looking. The old ones were kind of, I don't know, squarish and clunky looking, but these new knob end caps are a lot slimmer and stylish, and that's because they are on the ends of these brand new knobs. I have to say, these are now currently my favorite Shimano knobs of all time. Probably my favorite knobs, period. Now, when the CURADO K came out, I really loved the big, oversized knobs on the CURADO K. They're very comfortable, a lot of real estate for you to rest your finger and thumb. Super soft. They look good, especially if you have the chrome end caps. But if you take these knobs and you shrink them down, you got the knobs on the new Metanium. Of course, they're still, ergonomic and asymmetrically shaped, but they are just not quite as big, and they feel more natural between my thumb and forefinger. So the knobs are definitely an upgrade. Now, speaking of upgrade, when you're turning the handle on this new Metanium, it is definitely noticeably smoother. And there's also a change. So right now the drag is loosened all the way, and when you loosen the drag all the way and turn the handle on any reel, that's when it's going to feel its smoothest. But when you tighten the drag on this new Metanium, it feels exactly the same as if the drag was loosened, and no other reel can pull that off except for the new Antares A. That's the only other reel that can pull that feeling off. Now with the old one, feels great when you have the drag loosened. When you tighten it up, some of that goes away. Definitely does not feel as smooth as with a drag loosened all the way. So that's very, very promising on the new models. I'm not sure if that's because of the brass gears or of the new core solid body, but yeah, that's pretty awesome. And another change is going to be the gear ratios. Now they're still going to be a 6.2 to 1, which is what I have, but the high gear and extra high gear have dropped down to 7.1 to 1 and 8.1 to 1 versus 7.4 and 8.5. And I think that is because the gearbox on the new model looks to be smaller. Hopefully you guys can see the gearbox on the old model is definitely bigger. So maybe the main gear on the new model is probably smaller as well. Alright, so let's talk about the thumb bar. Now I'm very glad that Shimano went with the old traditional design, and it's changed a little bit. As you can see, it's not all chrome, it's only partially chrome while this part is black. But it's flat, which I'm glad they went back to that design versus the newer designs like on, you know, the ANTARES, and of course the new CURADO. Don't like this thumb bar design, but this is probably the worst feeling thumb bar as far as engagement on a Shimano that I felt probably ever. Now there's no wiggle or slop, but it's very notchy. It's not as smooth and precise as the thumb bar engagements on all my other Shimanos, and I'm not sure if it's my particular reel or if it's going to be all the Metaniums. So anyone with a new 2020 Metanium, let me know how your thumb bar engagement is. But I'm glad they went with the flat design. Okay, so now it's time to get to the nitty gritty. We're going to pull the scale out and get some weights. So despite having changed the gear material to heavier brass, Shimano apparently took a lot of steps to keep the weight of the Metanium the same as the old model. So we're going to weigh the old model first. Now keep in mind this is the XG that's got the longer handle and probably a bigger main gear. So the old model weighs in at 6.2 ounces, which is pretty good for a reel this size. And the new model weighs in at 6.15. So it is slightly lighter, but if you got the XG model, that comes with a slightly longer handle and maybe a bigger main gear. But yeah, they did definitely keep the weight of the new model the same as the old model. But what's funny is that it feels heavier in hand because I guess all the weight is centralized versus spread out on the old model. Alright, so let's get to the spools, and that's going to be one of the most important things to see if they drop the spool weight of the new Metanium versus the old. Alright, so since this is the core solid body, I believe the way you rotate this, it's going to be, yeah, just like that. And I would probably advise that you take your hand and push the side plate out. There we go. Because this is held in place by a O-ring, but it's definitely easier to turn than the Bantam. And I think I know why, because I definitely feel some grease on the edges there. But yeah, there we go. Okay, so it comes with the same brake system as the old one. All 4 brakes are activated right now. External dial came set to 1. Alright, so here's the new spool. So I went ahead and pulled the spool out of the old model as well, and let's do a comparison. As you can see, the new model keeps the long spool shaft, and apparently they're still made of steel. They're not going with aluminum just yet. But look at the width difference. Hopefully it'll show up there. So this has a 19mm width while this has a 22mm width. And both of them are 34mm in diameter. But I'm still confused as to why they're not giving the new spool the old style NGL porting. Maybe that's to come in the future. Can't give us everything all at once. Okay, so let's get a weight. Now of course both of these have bearings, and the old model 14 grams, so without the bearing you're probably looking at about 12.4 to 12.5 grams. Now they feel about the same in weight. The new model 13.9 grams, so virtually the same damn weight despite being 3mm thinner. And that's kind of disappointing because the bearings are definitely the same. So this is probably a 12.5 gram spool without the bearing. So I'm wondering, well, I'm pretty sure I know why Shimano did that, because they didn't want the new Metanium outcasting the Antares A. Okay, so it's time to talk about one more thing, and I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys thought I forgot about it. That's going to be the line guide on the new Metanium, and more specifically, the distance from the line guide to the top of the spool. So luckily, the new Metanium has gotten the much bigger line guide that's in the Antares, as you can see there. Now the old one had a cone-shaped tapered line guide, but as you can see, the opening was much smaller. But the distance between the line guide and the spool was much bigger, and I got a little scientific experiment I'm gonna do here. I got me a Q-tip and a pen. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to take the Q-tip, hopefully it'll stick there, and press it up against the edge of the line guide, and then I'm gonna mark where the top of the spool is, because the line comes off the top of the spool, not the front. Okay, so there's the new one. Holy crap. All right, look at this, guys. This is the new one, and this is the old one. That's almost like a ½ inch. So the distance between the line guide and the spool has definitely gotten shorter. Take a look at the old Metanium. The line guide was poked out probably as far as it could go. Probably one of the reasons why this thing is such a monster caster. And the new one, just like the Bantam and the Antares A, it's got a lot of space to go before it even comes close to the front of the frame. So that is hugely disappointing, and something that I brought up in preview videos. And yeah, but let me show you guys something. And here's the Antares A, and we're gonna do the same super scientific method on the Antares, and it is virtually the same distance as the new Metanium. Now I bring that up because I had the Antares out today doing battle against the REVO MG Extreme, and this thing is a freaking monster caster. It gets better every time I take it out, and that's really promising for this new Metanium, because of course, you know, when you narrow the spool, you don't have to have the line guide poked out so far. Plus, with the addition of the bigger line guide, hopefully that equates to, at minimum, hopefully, equal performance to the old model. Because in the videos that I've been seeing that the Japanese YouTubers have been doing, I haven't been really impressed by the casting distance of this newer model. But there's absolutely no doubt that this new model has some very giant shoes to fill. I mean, the old model was so good, so smooth, and cast so good that two of the top fishing YouTubers, John B and One Rod, both regularly use this reel. And you know, those guys have money to buy any reel they want, and they're choosing the 2016 Metanium MGL. So what I'm gonna do next is, of course, I'm gonna string both of these reels up, take it out tomorrow, and do some casting. And maybe we'll see if there's a difference or not in both casting and retrieve smoothness, ergonomics, and all that good stuff. So see you out on the water.